Please state their name and their affiliation, which is which organization you're with or company, or if you're with neither, then folks could just let us know that they're testifying on their behalf. And so with that, we'll start with our first testifier, and that's Andrew Moffitt, calling from Wasilla. Mr. Moffitt, if you could state your name, your affiliation, and go ahead and start with your 2-minute testimony.
Well, for the record, my name is Andrew Moffitt. I live in Wasilla, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm dual certified through the state of Alaska in behavioral health and chemical dependency counseling. I'm also nationally certified as a chemical dependency counselor, and I'm here to talk about behavioral health treatment and recovery grants along with crisis stabilization grants. So thank you for taking the time to hear my testimony. I work as a substance use disorder program manager at True North Recovery, and had it not been for these services, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Since this pandemic, I've seen an increase in the need for substance use disorder services due to the substance misuse, depression, anxiety, jobs, and a large portion of my clients finish treatment and with no secure housing. The funding for these grants support ongoing operations for the community service providers like myself to serve the most vulnerable of Alaska's populations. I've also witnessed a growing need for crisis stabilization. The clients I work with most often or not, for various reasons, do not have same-day access to treatment. I've witnessed community members with substance use disorders succumbing to their disease. Life is sometimes measured in inches and seconds, and this is personal to me. As I've lost a child I raised, his name was Brandon, to this disease because there was not enough services to provide for him in his time of crisis. Crisis stabilization is critical for serving Alaskans experiencing behavioral health crisis. Mobile health crisis teams can provide on-the-spot access to a mental health clinician and also peer support specialists who can work to de-escalate and stabilize and refer them to the appropriate care. It can also free up some services for law enforcement, emergency medical, hospital, courts, jails, and prisons. And I want to thank you for hearing my testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moffitt. I don't see any questions from the committee. We do have one person at the Cordova Legislative Information Office, so we'll go over to Tommy Sheridan. If you can state your name, your affiliation, and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony here today. For the record, my name is Tommy Sheridan, and I'm a 12-year resident of Cordova, Alaska. I'm representing myself as an independent consultant. I've been employed in a variety of capacities throughout Alaska's seafood industry for 20 years, including project and organizational leadership with Alaska Salmon Hatchery Operators, Alaska's Department of Fish and Game, a major seafood processing company, and more recently have transitioned into consulting and academic roles in support of fisheries development in Alaska. I currently serve the state of Alaska on the Governor's Alaska Bycatch Review Task Force and as a commissioner on the North Pacific Anadromous Fish Commission. I'm speaking here in favor of Representative LeBon's language appropriation to add $7 million in general funds to support the University of Alaska's mariculture, North Pacific fisheries, and Arctic Ocean sciences. The state of Alaska is currently at the forefront of at least 2 major industrial transitions, including those impacting the energy and seafood sectors. Retrospective analyses of similar previous transitions in the upper Midwest and Pacific Northwest result in recommendations that policymakers leverage the role that research universities can and should play in supporting private actors and impacted communities to reimagine their industries. I believe that Representative LeBon's and the university's focus on mariculture development acknowledges the unique opportunities and challenges facing Alaska's seafood industry, due in large part to current and predicted impacts of climate change. In closing, I believe that investment in mariculture gives the state much bang for its buck. This proposed investment in particular would allow for the leveraging of longstanding institutions such as the University of Alaska Fisheries Technology Program and the development of newer entities such as the University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Blue Economy Center to the benefit of the Alaskan seafood industry and the coastal rural communities dependent upon its success. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sheridan. I don't see any questions from the committee. So with that, we will move over to Abby Hensley, calling in from Anchorage. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Executive Director of Best Beginnings.
Ms. Hensley.
Foster and members of the committee, thank you for providing an opportunity for the public to share with you our recommendations for the FY 2023 state budget. I'm here today to ask you to continue your support for Best Beginnings and our most visible program, Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, and the Early Learning Coordination line in the Department of Education and Early Development budget. This is Best Beginnings' 15th year anniversary, and we've been good partners with BEAD since the beginning. We're pleased there's been so much attention on early education and reading this session, and we hope, as you do, that there are positive results. We want all Alaska children to be good readers by third grade. Best Beginnings work complements those efforts and helps lay the foundation for children's success. Their parents and caregivers benefit too. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends parents read with their children from birth. This not only helps build babies' brains and further their academic development, but strengthens the bonds between parent and child. Parents who read and share books with their young children have been shown to employ less harsh parenting practices, and their children demonstrate better behavior. But not all families have access to books. This may be even more important during COVID-19. These are stressful times for families, and providing supports like books for their children and parent education resources is impactful. While Imagination Library books are free to families, no, Dolly Parton does not foot the bill. In fact, it's Best Beginnings and 29 other Alaska Imagination Library affiliates that come up with $30 per year per child to run the program. Last month, 14,226 Alaska children in 138 communities found a new age-appropriate, high-quality book in their mailbox. Sadly, this number is down from a high of 23,378 in 2015. An additional $300,000 would enroll 10,000 more children and bring us just about to where we were in 2015. An Imagination Library works. In 2020, Education Northwest in Portland, Oregon, conducted the first large-scale quantitative evaluation of the Imagination Library program in Alaska. It showed participation in Imagination Library is associated with higher literacy skills and increased kindergarten readiness, according to the Alaska Developmental Profile Indicators. We encourage you to support Best Beginnings and Imagination Library in the DEED budget and with the Alaska Library Network in the university budget. And thank you for including an additional $2.5 million for pre-elementary grants for FY 2023. Thank you so much for your support of young children.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Hensley, if you could state your name and your affiliation again, we just missed the first 5 seconds. Ms. Hensley, are you still there? Oh. Representative Josephson, you had a question for her, I believe.
I'll call her. I'll find her.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Okay, just for the record, I believe that was Abby Hensley with Best Beginnings in Anchorage. And next up, we have Kara Nelson calling in from Wasilla. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Hi, thank you for this opportunity to testify. For the record, my name is Kara Nelson. I'm the Director of Development and Public Relations for True North Recovery, and formerly the Director of Haven House Juneau. I'm a reentry coach and a volunteer prison chaplain, also a board member of the Advisory Board on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse. I'm in support of behavioral health treatment and recovery grants. I'm in support of technology and telehealth system and policy improvements. I strongly support elevating the Alaska Peer Support Certification Program and support of the Crisis Stabilization Grant Funds. True North Recovery is a recovery community organization in the Mat-Su Valley and recently expanded to Fairbanks. We have utilized treatment and recovery grants along with the 1115 waiver to serve hundreds of Alaskans through residential inpatient treatment, outpatient, intensive outpatient, recovery residences, reentry services, case management, crisis stabilization, and more. With peer support as the essential component throughout all of our services and programs to provide person-centered long-term sustainability to recovery. I'm currently in Fairbanks right now working with peers on the mobile crisis team through the Crisis Now model, and I've seen firsthand the benefits of crisis stabilization efforts that serve our Alaskans experiencing mental health, substance use, and other crises. Our peer support professionals provide immediate crisis support along with a clinician to de-escalate stabilization and refer to appropriate care. We're currently hoping to expand this in the Mat-Su Valley very soon as well. Most importantly, I'm a mother of 3 adult children, Christopher, Alexis, and Isaiah, all of whom have experienced untreated trauma, mental health issues, and my daughter, who has been in active use for many years and was recently incarcerated. I myself am a woman in recovery. I celebrated 10 years, June 1st, 2011. I'm formerly incarcerated and spent nearly 20 years of my life in certain deaths with certain substance misuse and cycling through our Alaskan prisons and systems of care. I like to say those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. As a behavioral health professional, a person with lived experience, a mother who has walked through this with my own children, and hundreds of Alaskans that I have walked alongside through active addiction, recovery, incarceration, everything in between, I urge you to support these efforts for a better Alaska. We are the solution together. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, thank you, Ms. Nelson. I don't see any questions. Committee, were you here for public testimony, sir? Okay, and are you signed in on the, oh great, okay. With that, let's see here. Looks like they'll get you in on my little screen here in a little bit. So next we'll go to Ann Bailey calling in from Anchorage. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Yes, good morning. My name is Annie Bailey. I'm the administrator for the Aleutians East Borough. The Aleutians East Borough is responsible for municipal governance for the communities of Akitan, Cold Bay, False Pass, King Cove, Nelson Lagoon, and Sandpoint. These communities consist of approximately 3,140 residents and a large transient fishing population. Our only local tax base is raw fish tax. The remaining revenue largely comes from state and federal sources. The Aleutians East Borough supports the need for a balanced approach between the permanent fund dividend and support for provision of state services. We ask that you support the following items as you go through your budget process. Fully fund school bond debt reimbursement, fully capitalize community assistance.
Okay, we are back on the
fully
record
fund school construction
and
or major maintenance,
debating the
and
conference
fully
committee
fund the harbor
report.
bond debt reimbursement that by law is to be reimbursed at 100%. I'd like to focus a little more on the harbor bond debt reimbursement. The borough incurred harbor bond debt for both the Akitan and False Pass harbor projects in 2002 and 2003. The decision to take on the debt was not taken lightly and was done in good faith and understanding that the state would reimburse the borough in full for the harbor bond debt incurred. Alaska Statute 2960-700 explicitly authorized and encouraged the issuance of debt for these projects. In FY19, the enacted state's budget did not include an appropriation allowing DOT to make a payment to the borough for the debt service on outstanding debt for the borough's False Pass and Akitan small boat harbors. Therefore, between FY19 and FY22, the borough has not received approximately $1.5 million in harbor bond debt payments from the state. This has proven to be a very big financial hardship for the borough, and we encourage you to look at options to reinstate the harbor bond debt reimbursements, including approval of FY22 appropriations and reinstatement of the harbor debt reimbursement in the FY23 operating budget. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. And I don't see any questions of the committee, so we'll go to the room here. Mr. Kevin Higgins, if you can state your name and your affiliation. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you for being here. My name is Kevin Higgins. I'm here in my personal capacity, but I am an Assistant Attorney General at the Department of Law. I have been with the department since 2018, November 30th. The earthquake was my first day, and prior to that, I had my own private practice here in town doing family law for 7 years, and from 2007 to 2011, I was an Assistant Public Defender here in town. I'm here to express my support, and I've spoken with others, but I cannot speak for them, that we support the amendments 1 through 4 that were offered in the House subcommittee. Oh, thank you very much. That were offered in the Finance Subcommittee on the Department of Law. We think that it is I think that it is a good first step to addressing retention issues in the immediate future. It's going to be a long road of recovery for the department. We have seen unprecedented transition. We have what I like to box into 3 different kinds of attorneys. We have new attorneys who are coming out of law school and looking for a job and looking to get second to none in terms of experience of the things that you get to work on. We have people who come here at the end of their career looking to just kind of bring it down 1 gear. And then we have attorneys who are in the prime of their career who could easily step off and go somewhere else and make a lot more money than we make. But we're here doing this work because we want to have what used to be better quality of life considerations for the attorneys. It was weekends off. It was closer to an 8 to 5 workday. And of course, you get the people who are there out of a sense of service. The quality of life considerations are almost gone completely. The pay is no longer sufficient. The raises haven't kept up with inflation. Lower retention and poor recruiting means more work for current attorneys. We have unrealistic demands. We have a demoralized workforce. We are burning out and we are leaving the department. Unknown at the end of each fiscal year whether a budget will be passed. It's hard. I took 6 days of vacation in February. There were 4 days in February I didn't work. We're here to do the work that we're given. We want to do it for the people who are asking us to do it. We want to do good things. Last, I should say that we, the attorneys, have not stepped up to the plate. We haven't taken matters into our own hands, but we will. Their Public Employment Relations Act is a beautiful thing, and we plan to take full advantage of it, and I'd like to help be part of the solution to the problem. I believe in the Department of Law. I think it is a fantastic institution, and I'd like to help rebuild it. Thank you.
Great, thank you for your testimony. I don't see any questions at the committee, so thank you for being here. Next, we'll go to Mike Welch in North Pole. Mayor Welch, if you can put yourself on the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Michael W. Welch, and I am the mayor of the city of North Pole, representing approximately 2,200 citizens, and I have lived here since 7/7/99. I want to address one concern that I'd like to see properly taken care of, and that's the public employee retirement system, the liability that's overshadowed it, and it needs a serious overhaul. It's costing my city approximately $800,000 a year for the 22% of the salaries that I pay into it. And I don't think that for the Tier 4 employees, there's much in it for them. I believe that we need a hybrid system. We could look at other systems that are employed around the country, especially when I was in the federal government. We had a very good system there. The thing that I look at is the liability. I think the last time I checked, there was approximately $55,000 per capita for every man, woman, and child for liability that's existing in that fund, and I believe we should do what it takes to get that fund paid off. But before we can pay it off, we have to have a better system to replace it, so I understand that. So I would task members of the Finance Committee to look very hard at that. And the other thing that I would say is I'd like to see fully capitalize the Community Assistance Plan. It means a lot to our 2,200 citizens. We use the money very judiciously here. We are in a very upward growth mode because of the added to mission with Eielson Air Force Base, what will come to us the next few years with the United States Army nearby Fort Wainwright. So whatever we can do to get that fully capitalized again, I would appreciate it, and I'll answer any questions.
Great, thank you. I've got a question from Representative Laban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mike, thank you for calling in. And you mentioned Eielson Air Force Base, and I would like to just give a shout out to the community in North Pole with your leadership for making the new airmen at Eielson feel very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Laban, and I appreciate your support of us in these efforts as well.
Great, thank you. So next we'll go over to Valerie Therian, calling in from Fairbanks. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Yes, my name is Valerie Therian. I'm calling on behalf of the Fairbanks City Council. I'm on the Legislative Committee, and I wanted to thank the legislature for supporting 100% school bond debt reimbursement. I also appreciate very much the recapitalization of the community assistance being fully funded. We're on a very tight budget at the city, and we have a cap within the cap, so we have very limited resources to increase our taxes. And the money that we are going to receive from the recapitalization of community assistance is going to help us fund our new contract with the police department, which we've increased their salaries. I also want to thank the additional funding for the community jails. Although we don't have one, I think it's really important that that gets funded. And on a personal note, I appreciate the support for KUAC. Is there any questions?
We've got one from Representative Laban.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Valerie, for calling in, and thank you for your long tenure of support for the city and service on the city council.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we'll move over to Mark Detter, calling in from Valdez. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Thank you, committee members. I'm Mark Detter, the city manager of the city of Valdez. And the city of Valdez would just urge the state to fully fund the Harbor Matching Grant Program. I think there's $20 million right now being suggested for funding of that. Valdez is currently in the current round of fiscal year 2023 funding ranked Tier 1, a top project according to the Harbor Grant Program. The city also supports the $8 million increase for the funding of community jails. I think the data shows that Valdez is one of the lowest funded community jails in the state. The city would also urge the committee to look at supporting the recapitalization of the Community Assistance Fund and fully funding the, continue with the commitment of fully funding the school bond debt reimbursement program. Lastly, we're a coastal community, and the funding of the Alaska Marine Highway for a full schedule this year should continue on. I thank the committee again for their time and ask for your consideration of these requests. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I don't see any comments from the committee, so we'll next move over to Nancy Bale, calling from Anchorage. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Good morning, Chair Foster and members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to provide testimony as you consider HB 281. My name is Nancy Bale, and I'm a school nurse in Anchorage, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the Alaska School Nurses Association, which represents hundreds of school nurses statewide. As you probably know, school nurses have been very busy this year, helping provide COVID-19 education, surveillance, and testing for both students and staff, and in addition, continuing our usual duties of screening, immunization, daily care, case management, and preparation of Alaska students for a healthy life. Through the pandemic, we've shown the value of having a nurse in place at school. To that end, and as you know, in many Alaska school districts, our positions are financed through the base student allocation, along with teacher and related service positions. We consider it vital for you to support robust funding and inflation proofing for the BSA. We also support efforts to recruit and retain public health nurses who provide many school nurse functions in rural areas of the state where there isn't a school nurse in every school. So please pass the incremental increase of $50 million in BSA funding recommended by the Education Finance Subcommittee. And in addition, please pass additional funding to be used for recruitment and retention of public health nurses recommended by the HEalth Finance Subcommittee. These inputs will help to promote continuation of school health services for all Alaska children, wherever they live. And we ask that you do all you can do as the Finance Committee to help ensure that every Alaska student has daily access to a professional nurse. Written comments with contact information about our organization were submitted earlier today. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a question from Representative Josephson.
Actually, Mr. Co-Chairman, just a thank you and a shout out to Ms. Bale for her testimony.
Great. Thank you. And so next we'll go over to Don Gray calling in from Fairbanks. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Yes, my name is Don Gray. I live here in Fairbanks, Alaska, and although I'm part of a number of people who are grandparents of children in the schools of Alaska, we're probably not the kind of group that you're describing there, and there's no official affiliation. I also speak in favor of the BSA, that is the base student allocation, in large measure, not only because of my two grandsons in the Anchorage School District, but also for children who are in the K-12 schools throughout the state. Not just in the cities, the big cities like Anchorage, Juneau, Fairbanks, or the middle-sized cities in the peninsula or Matsu, but schools out in the northeast of us here at Chalkitsik or Fort Yukon, or down in the southwest corner of the state, Bethel, and the smaller schools there. Children all over this great state need an increase in the base student allocation. I think it was SB 20 or HB 273 and 272 that would address that. The $50 million to the amount that has not seen an increase in 7 years, and then also to make that something that will continue to be addressed as the state grows and as expenses grow and as inflation goes. Appreciate very much all of you being in the office to speak to us on this Saturday. You've got a tough job. $50 million for a state with the thousands of children that we have, K-12, may sound like a lot, but it really is not in comparison to a lot of the other sums that we see. So thank you again very much, and you're doing a fine job.
Great. Thank you very much. We've got a question or comment from Representative Wool.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Thanks, Don, for calling in. This is Rep. Wool, and thanks for your comments. I believe we'll be hearing those bills here in the near future for the BSA increase, and many of us support that. And thank you for your many, many years of dedication and service to the education community.
Thank you.
Okay, and next we'll go over to Corey Aist, calling in from Anchorage. Corey, if you could put yourself on the record, state your name, your affiliation.
Yes, thank you, committee members. My name is Corey Aist, and I am currently president of the Anchorage Education Association, representing over 3,000 educators across the Anchorage Bowl. Before that, I worked 24 years in the elementary division, 10 years at Muldoon Elementary, Title I school, and then 14 years at Polaris K-12. I want to thank you for your support for additional money going towards the BSA, debt reimbursement, and I'd also like to advocate for coming back to a forward funding model for K-12 schools across Anchorage as well as across the state. As you have probably heard, we are in a crisis in the education in the education world. We have a staffing problem. We had over 100 open vacancies in this year for educators, in addition to 100 teaching assistant ESP positions. That causes significant harm to our students in terms of outcomes, because we're pulling teachers from additional to cover additional classes from their own classes. Your teachers across the Anchorage School District and across the state have worked so hard to keep schools open during this time of COVID, and our students and families need all the support they can get from Juneau and across the state from our Alaska legislators. Our students and families also need increased support in regards to mental health. Mental health has taken a huge churn downwards, and we can see that also in regards to our current outcomes for our students. Please continue to support forward funding, or bring that back, and also HB 220 to retain our educators who are currently in the state. We have a very hard road ahead in terms of hiring new educators, and we've actually got to churn the table and work harder to retain the educators we currently have, both in Anchorage and across the state. Again, I want to thank you for your support and your time today.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ace. We've got a question from Representative Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Ace. You mentioned that the Anchorage School District had 100 positions that needed to be filled this year, and I would assume those your certified teacher positions. And then you mentioned another 100 paraprofessional positions. Were you able to fill all of those positions, or how many are currently unfilled, if there are any?
Those numbers were from February. I don't think that they've changed much. What we're seeing now is early submittals of retirees and resignations through different incentive programs, so that the school district can get a better view of what staffing needs are going to be for next year. But I haven't looked in March, but I'm pretty certain that we're still close to those numbers. I haven't seen or been told of very many new educators being hired in the last month.
So follow up, just for clarification, then you're talking about those openings, projected openings for the upcoming school year. Is that correct?
No, I should re-clarify myself. Those are currently open positions unfilled across the Anchorage School District. Next year, what keeps me up at night is not this year, but staffing for next year. How are we going to fill all the vacancies that potentially will be opened up due to resignations and retirees? So I will clarify that it's currently, there are approximately 100 open teaching positions across the Anchorage School District, as well as 100 ESP positions.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for your testimony today. That helps clarify things. It sounds like a pretty dire situation. Thank you.
Thank you for your support.
Okay, next we'll go over to Penny Vadla, calling in from the Kenai Peninsula. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. I'm calling fairly remotely. My name is Penny Vadla. I am from the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District, and I'm on the Board of Education. I am really pleased to be able to testify again today on this House bill and House Bill 281, the operating budget. So I appreciate all the work that all of you have done to put this forward. And since I'm remote, I don't have many of my documents with me. But what I would like to say is that it's really important that we increase funding to education, not just take full funding. Full funding is flat education, and it's really important to note that. We have done quite well, in a way, during this pandemic because we have had the support of the government who has helped us. But within 2 years, we will have a deficit that will be enormous because that flat funding will go away. Excuse me, because the funding will go away, and we will not have the opportunity to continue to build some of our our funds. We will actually be in a deficit. So the forward funding is very important. Our VSA has been $5,930 for too many years. Because of that, we have had to use some of our general funds. We will go in a deficit if we do not have an increase to the base student allocation and an effective date to do that. And the fiscal year, each fiscal year will get worse. I think House Bill 272 and 273, the finance for the BSA will be really important for us to have. Because of some of the things that we have been going through in all the districts, not just on the Kenai, I think all of the districts all around the state, I believe that students and staff and families are suffering. We have had a problem with teacher retention. We have had a problem with support for students with social emotional learning and wellness. We have instituted many successful programs, and because of the loss of people who are leaving education all around the country, not just around the state, I think that we will have issues in the future. I am also in favor of House Bill, and I spoke on this House Bill yesterday, 350, school bond debt reimbursement, and I think that will be, and I would like that, if possible, for that school debt reimbursement to be increased to 60% for repairs and 70% for rebuilds. Our kids, in my mind, I have been a teacher all my life. I came up here, despite my accent that you can hear, in 1977 for 1 year. I believe Alaska is a strong, solid, caring, loving state. I think our number one priority is our kids, our students, our families. And it's really important for me as an educator in K-12 and at the college level that we continue to provide a stable, sustainable budget that will provide for a long-term fiscal plan and forward funding that allows us to reach out to people and encourage them to come up here. Our superintendent, Mr. Clayton Holland, stated a long-term state fiscal plan and forward funding of K-12 education will provide predictability for school districts and is necessary for positive outcomes. We've worked hard, as have other teachers all around the state and superintendents and principals, to provide a quality education. The last 2 years have been really hard for teachers and for students and for families and for you folks as well. So I'm going to acknowledge that. I hope, and my hope is that we can continue to put students and education first. We also need to look at the retirement and the tiers 1, 2, and 3 and so forth. But that's a whole different other topic. So because we need a sustainable, timely, adequate education funding plan, it has to be predictable. It has to increase the funding costs and look at the diversity of each district and the significant needs for our students. And the early notification of that funding is important so that we can retain teachers when we pink slip them.
Ms. Vadla, I'm sorry, if you could please wrap up.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have any questions of the committee? I don't see any, so next we'll go over to Tiffany Mills, calling in from Craig. Ms. Mills, if you could state your name and your affiliation.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Mills, and I am the Executive Director for Helping Ourselves Prevent Emergencies. The acronym is HOPE on Prince of Wales Island in Craig. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I'm here to talk about the housing shortage experienced on Prince of Wales and in so many other rural areas of Alaska. I support the House Budget Subcommittee's recommendation to use $3.5 million in general funds to replace the temporary federal funds for grants that support community-based domestic violence, sexual assault programs statewide, specifically for children and families experiencing violence or sexual assault. These programs support the provision of wraparound services that promote safety and increase access to services such as housing. We've experienced a significant shortage in housing availability for victims on Prince of Wales. I mean, imagine being a victim of domestic violence who finally gains the courage to take a step forward toward independence and then contact a domestic violence agency and qualify for housing, only to find out that there's no housing actually available at the time, so the victim's going to have to wait. So what do? Now they've left their abuser who provided a roof over their head, food for their children, and some sense of security, but they have nowhere to go without having to leave the only community that they know. And this is how so many of the victims feel who come to us for support. You know, how empowered a victim can feel when they leave an abusive situation and our agency is able to offer them and their kids stable housing. When no housing is to be found, a victim again feels betrayed, dejected, scared, and disappointed. So unfortunately, the chances are they won't return to us for help because they feel like we're not going to help them. So if housing were available for rent, we would be able to help so many more survivors gain their independence. But now there are no properties for rent, so our hands are tied when we're trying to help them. So we need more funding to support construction of transitional housing for victims. Greater access to housing throughout the state would support hundreds of survivors in their decision-making to leave abusive relationships. So we thank you for your continued support in the domestic violence and sexual assault agencies, and I thank you for taking the time to hear my story today.
Great, thank you very much. Ms. Mills, I don't see any questions of the committee. And so with that, at this time we have no more testifiers. However, we are scheduled to go until 2 o'clock. If I could just restate the phone numbers again, if folks are interested. What we're going to do is come back in about 25 minutes at, we'll take an at ease, come back in 25 minutes at about 12:15 and see if we have more testifiers. If folks would like to call in, the phone numbers again are, if you're calling from outside of Anchorage or Juneau, the phone number is 844-586-9085, and I'll swing back to that number again. If you're in Anchorage, you can call 907-563-9085, and then if you're in Juneau, you can call 907-586-9085. So to repeat those again, if you're calling in from outside of Anchorage or Juneau, the number is 844-586-9085. If you're calling from Anchorage, 907-563-9085. And if you're calling from Juneau, you can call 907-586-9085. And then if you'd like to submit public testimony via email, you can do so by writing to us at house.finance@akleg.gov. Again, house.finance@akleg.gov. So with that, we will take an at ease until 12:15.
Hello, my fellow Alaskans. Thank you for tuning in here today. Facebook is definitely working extremely hard to shut down this video. They are working in the background, and they have gone and made sure that the reach of this video is not going to all Alaskans. I have over 4,600 followers on Politidic, and it has reached less than 100 people so far. So that just goes to show you how much Facebook is shadow banning any conservative pages. One of the good examples is I recently streamed the State of the Union address with Joe Brandon, and they have slapped copyrights against my restreaming of that video. And they made claims that CBS held rights to the actual video that I had restreamed, which was complete falsehood. As of about an hour ago, I just received a message that they received my dispute and they have released CBS's copyright notice that they have sent me. So the video should be back up and seeable again, but I just went and checked and it's still being blocked. And then I go and discover that now they have of all places, a Walt Disney copyright against my video. It's just absolutely flooring. They did it to both Politic and Politic Unfiltered. Yet YouTube and Twitter, the two most left-leaning censorship platforms that are out there, haven't flagged it. They didn't do anything. They didn't stop it from being seen. So if you are not already a subscriber, please go to Politic at YouTube and become a subscriber today and make sure you get that bell notification for when we go live. Thanks to your guys' support out there, we are able to actually afford to be restreaming this on YouTube and on Twitter and also to Politic Unfiltered and Politic on Facebook. It's your support that's making that possible and making that happen. I really wish I could be out there doing more, but it takes money to be able to do it, and I'm not exactly the richest in the world. And with this hyperinflation that just went through the roof, and I'm sure you all saw the post that I put up yesterday, the joke that I made about bragging about going someplace expensive. It's not me who... I'm not the type of person to brag when I go to places and spend a lot of money and that are considered extremely expensive. But I ran out of gas. So, you know, if you are in our economy right now, you are looking at the gas prices, 50-cent jump in just 3 days. I know when I go out later on today, I may see that has jumped even higher than what it was before. It would not surprise me that was what is going to go happen and is happening out there. So if you haven't done it already, please go to my website, politidic.com, and click that support button, make a donation today. Our goal is to start restreaming this also onto Rumble. And but Rumble is a paid-for service, so you have to pay to be able to stream to them. And without your support, I just can't afford to do it. Just the minimum package is $25 a month, and that only allows 50 people to be watching any given video at any time. And anything over 50 people, they will not allow you to participate in the video. So if the more you guys show your support, the more channels that I will be able to get out and stream these kind of things on. I am definitely getting more active out there. My health has gone straight downhill over the last 6 months, and it wasn't until just the last few weeks that I'm starting to feel like my old original self before my health had gone the other direction. My mental acuity had gone down the drain. I was fighting a virus that literally stuck with me for almost 3 months. And no, it was not COVID as far as I know. I wouldn't know anyways. That would require me to actually be tested and find out. But I was showing a lot of the signs that people are talking about out there. Mental fatigue, having a hard time remembering things, body aches, constant and consistent, you name it, everything that they consider out there. I mean, even at one point, everything that I was breathing in through my nose smelled like I was sitting inside of a cattle farm and getting to smell the bulls out there. And I'm sure you know what I mean. So here we are listening to the state and capital budget. It's a Saturday. They put 3 hours of time in today to be able to call in and testify, and the only people I've heard call in and testify today is the special interest. So where are all of Politic's followers out there? Where are all the conservatives out there in Alaska calling in to complain about the state and capital budget? Seriously, where are they? I just listened to the last person that testified. They gave them over 4 minutes to go on and on and on because their testimony matched the agenda of those sitting in the room. Yet when I called in and testified yesterday, Right at the 2-minute mark, Kelly Merrick, she shut my testimony down. They turned off my phone connection, says I had been disconnected. And then she goes out and makes remarks right after that to try to refute what I had to say. And I really wish I could have finished my testimony. It would have only been about another 45 more seconds, but they turned me off, shut me down, because what I had to say was the truth, and it 100% undermined their agenda. So here's the truths that they don't want you to know. Our Alaska state and capital budget is exactly $148 million more than what it was the previous year. One of the items that I'm going to highlight right now is the education, early education in K through 12. They are wanting to give a $50 million bonus this year to them. I'll repeat that, a $50 million bonus to K through 12 in early education. Their original budget was $1.33 billion last year. They're now proposing a $1.38 billion budget. And this bonus, that $50 million bonus, is contingent upon whether or not they pass the new SBA law, student-based allocation law. If they don't pass that law, they're going to give them the $50 million bonus. If they do pass the new student-based allocation SBA law, then they won't need to give them that bonus, because that will give them roughly around a $60 million increase on their current budget that they have right now. If they were to truly follow the laws that they have, the current law for student-based allocation, they should be seeing a 10% decrease in the K through 12 and early education funding. I'll repeat that, a 10% decrease in the budget. That's roughly around $130 million should be getting cut from K through 12 and early education. But as we all know, our Alaska legislators, they don't like following the law. If the law doesn't match their agenda, they just rewrite a new one. They don't even get rid of the old one. They just rewrite a new law and say, hey, this is going to overtake what the old law was, and this is what we're going to follow. We'll just leave the old laws on the books. Prime example of that is our statutory PFD and their POMV law that they have. They ignore the statutory PFD law, even though it has precedents on which law should be being followed. 4 decades of track record versus their 4 or 5 year track record now for SB 26. And here's the just really gets disgusting when you go and look at all the numbers and the facts of what is going on down there in Juneau. Number one is we've got the tax revenue that they've received this year, the revenue that they collect from all the oil taxes, the ground leases that they have, the billions of dollars they collect from the oil companies every single year, and all the other revenues from either fishing or mining or just the road tax, the gasoline tax that they collect, all these different taxes. Ironic, isn't it, that it is billions, and I repeat that word, billions, over what they need to actually pay for the state and capital budget this year and mental health budget. Billions over it. Instead of using the tax revenue they've received to pay for the budget, they still want to use their very corrupt POMV law and use that to say, this is what we're going to follow. We're not going to follow the actual laws that says we use tax revenue first. Instead, they want to use our earnings reserve account, steal our PFDs, and use that money to do whatever they want. How they're getting away with this, I have no idea, other than that Alaskans are silent. We're not speaking up enough. We're not sending them enough emails. We can fix that. We can send them emails. We can be calling in. We could be calling in right now. They're at ease because Alaskans are not picking up the phone and going and telling them that this corrupt budget of theirs, their corrupt policies, their corrupt spending, is destroying all of Alaskans' futures just to keep the special interest pork-filled budgets full beyond. As Natasha von Imhoff always likes to put out there, the greed and entitlement of Alaskans is astounding. I just can't believe it. Man, talk about greed, the multi-million-dollar trust fund baby there, the one who is now the sole person in charge, I shouldn't say sole person, but has been moved up in the ranks of running the Rasmussen Foundation, her family's foundation, the one that brings in hundreds of millions, and depending on the year, especially with COVID, billions of dollars a year. They are wanting this money, and they want it all. And it's just absolutely amazing what is going on out there and what they are doing. And but I'm going to pop up on the screen here in just a second. This is our state and capital budget of what they are proposing. And we'll move that over to the other side. Here is what it looks like right now. And you can see there in the early education and early development, it's $1.38 billion, and the last year's budget was $1.33 billion. That's a $50 million increase right there, and they're calling that a bonus if they do not pass their new SBA law, which is going to change the student base allocation. Health and social services down below it, that's a $60 million increase right there. Now, mind you, their total increases are around $148 million. They could remove the permanent fund completely off of this. There is no reason why they should be using our state taxes to pay us a permanent fund dividend. If they follow the statutory PFD law, it is a transfer from the earnings reserve account, which is, again, for the second year in a row, making record-breaking profits this year. As a matter of record, they could pay us our statutory PFD this year, which is going to be around $4,000 plus or minus, just a couple $100 either direction. They could completely pay back every penny they have stolen from us, all $14,000 over the last 6 years, and still have profits made from this year's returns. There's still 4 more months yet for them to record profits. If you listen to the legislators, they say it's $81.5 billion sitting there. And but if you go and take what they have not reported on yet, it's closer to $82.5 billion. By the end of the fiscal season, which is still 4 months out, it's going to be approximately another $4 billion more than what's in there right now, if things hold true. Hard to say, thanks to Joe Brandon creating the Ukraine war with Russia. There's nobody else to blame but Brandon and the Democrats for that happening. I find it really appalling that the Alaska House Coalition out there sent a letter saying that they want to divest to the Permanent Fund Corporation. They're demanding that they divest all money that may be placed within Russia to completely get it out. Ironic, isn't it, that the Democrat Party, the Alaska House Coalition, who is a part of that Democrat Party, are now complaining about where that money gets invested, yet it was their policies, their voting for Joe Brandon to be in the office that allowed him 4 days in to cause this catastrophe to happen, to cause this war to happen. Joe Brandon, 4 days in the office, shut down all oil production in Alaska that was on federal land, shut down ANWR, put a huge stop to the Willow project that would have been probably getting really close to being online by at this point and fully operational. That would have been at least another 200,000 barrels a day getting put into the pipeline to be shipped out. I mean, we're importing 600 million barrels a day from Russia right now. 600 million barrels a day, and you saw the prices of oil at $110 a barrel. We are funding Russia's war on Ukraine, and that instead of doing what is needed to be done, ramping up our production here in the United States, I mean, they shut down the Keystone Pipeline for 4 days in office, shut down ANWR, shut down Willow, shut down any mining projects. All fracking that is being done on government land was put to a complete halt. Nobody is allowed to do anything if it's on federal lands. And they don't want to ramp that back up. We had energy independence before Brandon took office, and now that Brandon took office, and we just watch it go down. And instead of doing the right thing, ramping up our production, helping out Americans, helping out our European countries that are in dire straits right now because of this war, and Joe Brandon and is a puppet of Putin. They always want to say that Trump was the puppet, but Trump was the one who placed the hardest sanctions against them, preventing them from getting Nord Stream 2 into production. But Brandon completely reversed that. He gave permission to Putin to go right off within first 4 days of office, reopen back up Nord Streams 2 to him, made it so that he no longer had to put them back into control of things again, put the European countries, put the foreign countries, OPEC, back in charge of America's oil production and independence that we did have, and made us into dependence, made us dependent upon Russian oil, foreign gas, foreign LNG to be able to meet our energy needs. We've seen the results of this in just the last few days. 50-cent jump at the pumps. Went from $3.79 to $4.29 overnight. Within 3 days, I watched it jump. And that's just in the more populated areas. I'm seeing reports out there of $4.44 a gallon. In the bush locations are now well up over $6 to almost $8 a gallon. The numbers are going to keep increasing. They're going to keep getting worse while we're out there. Again, the budget, you see it there. This is their proposed budget up on top right there. There is no reason why that the budget should look the way it does. The permanent fund should be completely removed out of there. They have a surplus in tax revenue this year, and Senator Mike Shower and several of the other legislators that are not on the corrupt agenda have pointed out that they have received so much tax revenue this past year. They have far exceeded anything that hasn't been seen into collections since prior to 2014. So the numbers that they're seeing there is back when they were spending like drunken sailors, and prior to 2014, and the Great Recession really set in here in Alaska, and oil prices dumped down into the tank, and they were no longer receiving the tax revenue to cover the budget. That's when they drained their CBR, and then shortly after that, that's when they started going after our permanent fund dividends and using that to offset the shortfalls. They claim they cut Alaska budget by 40%, but here they are, as soon as they get a little extra revenue, spending again like drunken sailors. And the money that they've received this year for tax revenue, again, far exceeds anything that they haven't seen since prior to 2014. And instead of putting that money away into the CBR account that is theirs, the one that they say is the reason why, because it's so drained down, the reason why they got to tap into our permanent fund dividends and spend money from there, they could be taking that surplus that they received, and we're talking billions of dollars. We're not talking just 100 million, 500 million. We're talking multiple billions of dollars that have come in this year, and they're expecting this to last for the next couple of years. But just in what they've received this year alone would offset any shortfalls for at least 2 to 3 years of the state and capital budget without ever tapping 1 cent from the earnings reserve account to pay for the budget. Instead of putting that money away into the CBR account, they want to give us a stimulus check that to help offset energy costs, is what they say, $1,300 more dollars. Well, let's do the math. A $4,000 permanent fund dividend plus or minus a couple $100 is supposed to be paid to us this year. $1,100 is what they want to give us for our permanent fund dividend. So that right there still leaves $2,900 that they are stealing. Now, they're not going to use the earnings reserve account to pay that $1,300 stimulus. No, they're going to use the tax revenue they got, and they're going to give us $1,300 more. So let's just do a little bit of reality check here. Since they are, with their POMV law, taking that money out of our earnings reserve account, technically they're still just bribing us, paying us with the money that they should have been giving us for a permanent fund dividend. But because they control the purse strings and what accounts that gets pulled out of, they're going to claim that it came from tax revenue. Same way that they're going to pay our permanent fund dividend, the same way they paid us our permanent fund dividend last year. They use tax revenue. And their POMV draw, the money that they stole from the earnings reserve account, they use that to pay the state and capital budget with. Not 1 penny of that money actually paid for our permanent fund dividend last year, which goes 100% against the statutory PFD law. It just shows you how corrupt they really are. So again, there's so much money sitting there in the account right now, the general budget, the fund count, all the tax revenue that's been collected for this past year, they could 100% fund this year's state and capital and mental health budget without touching one penny of the earnings reserve account. No need to have their POMV draw at all, and still put billions, and I'll repeat that, billions away into the CBR account. Why is this so important? The CBR account has a clause built into it that anytime that it drops below $12 billion, it triggers what they call the sweep. We hear about the sweep every year. The the sweep has the power cost equalization in it. It has the whammy in it. It has all of these special programs that are being swept back. That money is being swept back over into the general budget, because until they get the CBR back up to $12 billion, they are constitutionally mandated under Alaska law to sweep that money back into the accounts again, and then they have to get a 3/4 vote to reverse sweep that money back into where they want. They're trying to eliminate the sweep altogether. They want that law gone. In fact, they want the CBR completely gone. They want to roll that CBR of theirs into our earnings reserve account and say everything that's in the ERA is theirs to spend. This is their new CBR. Instead of taking that extra revenue, tax revenue that they get this year, and sticking it into the CBR, which approximately would bring the balance sitting there at over $5 billion, so they're getting even closer. If they were to follow the law, they would get even closer to making sure that it gets to that $12 billion mark, which would stop the sweep, which would stop the special interests out there from whining and crying every year that their marine ferry system is in jeopardy, that whammy's in jeopardy, the power cost equalization is in jeopardy. These law-breaking legislators that won't vote for it won't give the reverse sweep, which happened last year. Well, I'm seeing something going on there on the screen, and let me turn off that and see what is going on. Let's get some sound back. See if there's anything really happening there yet. Oh, no, not yet. Still nothing going on there yet. We'll just mute that part of the speaker system back out, but they are piling back in the room, and they should be any minute restarting back up here. And but yeah, no, it is absolutely amazing what they think they can get away with. And they are working hard rapidly to change it so that they can spend our money any way that they want. They got two new laws that they are bills they're pushing through, SB 199 and SB 200. Let's break those down. SB 199 says that they have to create $750 million new dollars in taxes, $750 million in new taxes before their 50/50 would come into play for our PFDs. So they haven't been able to get any new taxes over the last 6 years, not a single dime. Even the doubling of the motor fuel tax has failed the last few years. They've tried to pass that. And they expect to somehow miraculously convince them down there in Juneau to add $750 million new dollars in taxes to pay us a 50% PFD. What a joke. What that bill really does is it completely strips out the old statutory PFD law. It gets rid of it. No more conflict for them. It completely gets rid of any leverage that Alaskans have to prevent them from overdrawing and overspending the permanent fund dividend. The language in it says may. They may pay us a PFD or they may not. It starts out at around $1,100 and then is supposed to progressively work up to the 50/50 as they get the $750 million in new taxes, which they will never ever get because the Alaska legislators have already said that they won't add new taxes. That's never been their goal. So where do we stand at? And then we go to their SB 200. SB 200 is another corrupt 2575 POMV version law that they're creating, where 50% of the draw would go directly into school system K through 12 early education. As you saw there on the screen, as you can see, with their $50 million bonus, it's $1.38 billion. Well, if they were to follow that new law that SB 200 would create, that 50%, you see that 1.38 billion, that'll actually be $2 billion. Yes, you hear that right. $2 billion increase if they were to get the law to pass, because they will get 50% of that draw right up front. 5% of $82 billion at a 5% draw is roughly $4 billion this year. So that's an instant $600 and some million dollar jump to their budget in a blink of an eye by passing that very, very, very corrupt law. Then you go to the House. They got HB 259, and again, it's no different, same way. So if you haven't stopped right now and called in, it is time to do it. Get on the phone, call these legislators, give testimony. Oh, they are back on record again. Here we go.
12:17 p.m. on Saturday, March 5th. And we do have, looks like 2 callers. Ms. Liz Haywood, if you could state your name and your affiliation and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, I'm Liz Haywood, an officer of the Haynes Long-Term Recovery Group, which formed after our devastating December 2020 storm, and current chair of the Chilkat Valley Community Foundation. I'm calling today in support of the $586,000 currently included in the budget for Centers for Independent Living. SAIL, Southeast Alaska Independent Living, provides critical services for our most vulnerable population, seniors and persons with disabilities. SAIL has received numerous community foundation grants over the years, and I have seen their very careful stewardship of those funds, seeking collaborations to maximize the reach of their resources. No other organization provides the local services they do. When the December 2020 storm killed 2 residents, destroyed 10 homes, and displaced over 50 households, SAIL was quick to step in as a critical member of the recovery group team to identify and help meet survivor needs. 6 months after the storm, 23 households were still displaced, and 109 households were being assisted by SAIL and their team members. 15 months after, SAIL is still working closely with survivors in their recovery. SAIL is one of 2 organizations the foundation has entrusted with emergency response funds to aid in survivor assistance. They do an excellent job in their primary mission of serving our most vulnerable population, and they have continued that excellence in their pivoted response to the unique challenges created by the storm. Please support the important work done by CILs like SAIL by retaining the $586,000 dedicated to them in the current budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. I don't see any questions. Just a few announcements, and that is if folks could be sure to call in no later than 1:30 to be put into the list, put onto the list. We'll be taking names up until 1:30. And let's see here. Also, if folks would like to call in, if you've got a pen and paper, just the following 3 numbers. If you're calling in from outside of Anchorage or Juneau, you can call 844-586-9085. And if you're calling from Anchorage, you can call 907-563-9085. And finally, if you're calling in from Juneau, you can call 907-586-9085. And you can also submit written testimony to house.finance@akleg.gov. And so with that, we'll move to our next testifier, and that's James Kearns calling in from Gustavus. If you could state your name and your affiliation.
Yeah, hello. My name is James Kearns. I live in Gustavus. I'm affiliated with all of Alaska, all of Southeast Alaska, I guess. And by the way, just so you know, the 844 number, if you're calling from Gustavus, didn't work. So I just dialed in on the Juneau number, so maybe we feel like we're part of Juneau. So anyway, so I just wanted to say a couple things One of them is whatever's in the budget for the Alaska Marine Highway, we need to keep it. That is such a significant and important part of life in Southeast Alaska. It is our highway system. It connects us with the rest of Alaska's highway systems. So it's just one of many systems that Alaska has, and it's equally as important as all of them. And interesting, the workers that work on it, most of them are Alaskans. So it's better than almost any other tourist-related activity because it's working with Alaskans in Alaska. And so I like that. Anyway, so we're just hoping that you will keep working on making sure that the Alaska Marine Highway System is funded. It is important to all of us. And having ridden on the ferry one time with legislators coming down from Anchorage, I came on the Kennecott. And there was a whole bunch of legislators coming down in their cars and everything else. And what a great way to go. So it's so important. It's important for everybody. So just wanted to go on record saying I support whatever we can do to keep the Alaska Marine Highway System going. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. We've got Representative Ortiz.
Hi, Jim. Dan Ortez here. Nice to hear your voice. It's been a long time since we crossed paths. Hope you're doing well and appreciate your testimony on behalf of the Marine Highway System. I certainly agree with you.
Yeah, great to hear your voice too, Dan. Good job in there.
Thank you. And next up, we've got Brian Holst calling in from Juneau. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I am Brian Holst, the Director of the Juneau Economic Development Council and member of the Juneau Board of Education since 2014. The top legislative priority of the Juneau Board of Education is early, adequate, equitable, and predictable funding of public education. Since from 2011 to 2021, inflation has risen between 18 and 21%. And in that same period, the state BSA increased only 4.4%. Since 2011, Juneau schools have reduced 100 positions and experienced well over $10 million in cuts. We have experienced some slight reductions in enrollment, but not near the rate that we lose our staff. As we develop our budget this year at the school district, we continue to look to cut. We are raising class sizes. We're letting our equipment degrade. Flat funding means cutting. And throughout Alaska, schools struggle to recruit and retain our teachers. And we're aware that the education outcomes across Alaska are generally disappointing. Despite cuts, we have seen improvements in graduation rates in Juneau over the last 10 years, primarily by being more successful in supporting minority and low-income students. But at the same time, we continue to see too many of our kids struggle to read and do well in math and science. Our state does not have enough workers with college degrees or workforce credentials to meet the demands of the Alaskan economy. And employers struggle to find the talent they need for the workplace. Too many of our families struggle to access quality, affordable pre-K. Too many students are not ready to begin their education. Another priority for our district is funding pre-K. So if we want a different outcome, and if you want to be accountable to the expectations of our Alaskan families and business community, which I know you do, we need the state of Alaska to please make a stronger investment in education. Please fund pre-K and please increase K-12 spending. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Mr. Holst. And I don't see anybody in the room. And I don't see anybody else online at this point. So I will repeat the phone numbers again for anybody watching and would like to call in. The phone numbers, if you're calling from outside of Anchorage or Juneau, it's 844-586-9085. And if you're calling from Anchorage, the number is 907-563-9085. If you're in Juneau, and it sounds like in Juneau or Gustavus, you can call 907-586-9085, or you can submit your testimony in writing by emailing us at house.finance@akleg.gov. And just a reminder, we're asking if folks could please sign up no later than 1:30 p.m., call in, and just have your name added to the list. So with that, we will come back. Oh, I'm sorry, we've got one person here, and then after that, we'll come back in about half an hour at 1 o'clock. So we've got Janine Allen online calling from Haines. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Hi, my name is Janine Allen, and I live in Haines in Southeast Alaska. I'm both a person with a disability and a disability advocate at SAIL, and I'm here to talk about funding for Centers for Independent Living. I was diagnosed with moderate to severe hearing loss and started wearing hearing aids when I was still in preschool. My disability has coached me to be independent and to do what I can to advocate for others, which has landed me in my current role at SAIL, which stands for Southeast Alaska Independent Living. People with disabilities are independent, able to address our own challenges, and often we just need some logistical support to address the barriers we face. Centers for Independent Living all across Alaska provide this crucial support for Alaskans with disabilities to achieve our goals and to remain at home as vital members of our communities. Alaskan Centers for Independent Living have been flat funded for a decade, and yet the services we provide result in a significant decrease in both state and federal funding. Last year, we helped divert 111 Alaskans from nursing homes to home and community-based settings, which saved $15 million in public funds. As another example, SAIL collaborates with the VA to run a successful veteran-directed care program. Veterans needing a nursing level of care can hire family members, neighbors, and friends to provide that care and help them remain at home rather than move to a facility. This program creates jobs, saves money, and honors the independence and autonomy of veterans. Across the state, we are seeing an increase in the number of seniors and people with disabilities needing help with inflation levels and after 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has disproportionately impacted seniors and people with disabilities. Please support funding for Centers for Independent Living like SAIL so that we can help address these challenges and continue to support the cost-saving independence of seniors, people with disabilities, and veterans. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you, Ms. Allen. I don't see any questions from the committee, and I don't see anybody else online. So with that, we will stand at ease until 1 p.m.
Hello, my fellow Alaskans. I'm back once again, and they're taking another at ease for 30 more minutes because Alaskans are not calling in right now to testify. And so they won't be back until 1 o'clock. It's just amazing. Here's the budget. You can see it there directly in front of you right now. It's $148 million larger than what it was last year. The permanent fund dividend shouldn't even be included in their upfront total costs for the permanent fund. It shouldn't be in this budget. It should be completely removed. They should be following our statutory PFD law and transferring the statutory PFD formula, those funds into the budget after the fact, not including it in the budget. The reason why they included it in the budget is because they're not using the earnings reserve account as the statutory PFD formula states they should. Instead, they're using tax revenue. That's why it's included in the budget view that you see directly in front of you. Just another attempt to try to snowball Alaskans into thinking that they don't have any money. They have well over $2-3 billion above and beyond what they need to cover the entire state and capital budget this year from tax revenue. They should be taking all that extra revenue and sticking it into the CBR account so that it gets up to the $12 billion it's supposed to be at to stop the sweep, which is another huge critical point that they keep pushing on every single year. That's very obvious with the power cost equalization, the lawsuits, the WWAMI program, which the 4 students that sued Alaska just recently lost their case. These are the kind of things that these corrupt legislators down there are trying to stop. And it's just absolutely amazing. And to help fill a little bit of this time, I have a clip that I want to show everybody, and so that we can see exactly where the legislators themselves stand at. And it's just absolutely amazing how they think they can continue to keep getting away with what they do. But they continue to keep trying to get away with it, and it's never ending. It just doesn't end. So here, let me see if I can get that video to actually play.
Okay, we are back on the record and debating the conference committee report. Is there anyone else that would like to? Senator Von Imhoff.
Thank you, Mr. President. So
This was
I
from
just
last
want
year.
to make sure that the folks that are listening at home fully understands the consequences for today's actions. A no vote means the budget doesn't pass. 22,000 people, state workers, will be out of work July 1st. That does not include the tens of thousands of teachers and university employees around the state of Alaska. Everyone out of jobs will not be paid. For the reverse sweep, about $130 million will not be funded in the budget. Holes all over the budget. What kind of programs? The whammy. You want doctors? We're not going to pay for them anymore. The Alaska Scholarship Funds, all the folks that are trying to get an education at the university, gone. Remember a couple years ago when that happened? The public didn't like it. There were rallying cries right out in front of our building here. Community assistance, gone. Victims Restitution Fund, gone. The Power Cost Equalization Fund will be swept. All of those programs will not be funded. With the CBR vote not being funded, there'll be small to nearly nothing capital budget. No oil tax credits paid at all. 2/3 of the school bond debt reimbursement gone, not funded. Think about all of these year-round jobs. Good pay with benefits that support families, gone. Nothing. Nada. Hey, if you drive over a bridge, I suggest you hold your breath and pray, because it could fall on you, because no one's going to be around to fix it. If you want a permit to mine, nope, not gonna happen. If you're on food stamps and you call up and ask someone to process your application, no one will answer the phone. If you're on Medicaid and you need emergency surgery, no one's gonna authorize it because no one will answer the phone. Medicaid will be shut down. You call a state trooper, I'm sorry, you'll be sitting on the side of the road bleeding. No one will answer the phone. Summer school teachers, all those kids that were not in school for the past year, there is summer school going on right now. July 1st, nope, they're not gonna get paid. Those teachers, your kids, go home. No one's gonna be paid. Why? Because we want a bigger dividend. So $325 million approximately pays for a $500 check. So $1,000 dividends, about $650 million, and so forth. So I ask you this, what is the better investment? $325 million in helping people take a $500 check to pay for rent, to pay for utilities, to pay for school clothes, their debt, maybe the college, maybe on travel, putting it in savings, whatever it may be. Some folks really need this money, absolutely. But we have programs to pay for those. We have rent assistance. We have $200 million for Alaska housing assistance. We have a very robust Medicaid budget. We have scholarship assistance for people. Would $325 million be better spent on year-round jobs, on bridges, on roads, on connecting communities with roads, on more mining, more resource extraction? That's what we do. That's our state. Or do we just want to rely on the state government, the federal government forever? Mr. President, it's the dividend again and again. We are crippling our state and we are not moving forward. This budget has a $500 dividend or a $1,000 dividend. Not to mention all the other federal money that people have received this year. $1,400 in the CARES Act. Another $600 in the Alaska Recovery or American Recovery Act. There's been a lot of cash going out to people this year. This is the year that we should focus on reinvigorating our economy through year-round jobs that provide competitive wages, that support families well into the future. But no, here we are. Here I am. Here we all are, away from our families, debating a dividend. The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it. Are away from our families, debating a dividend. The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it. My father is at home dying of cancer, and I am here listening to the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard. I'm so sick of it. Get a grip, people. Vote for this budget, or no state trooper, no one will answer the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't. A dividend. The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it. My father is at home dying of cancer, and I am here listening to the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard. I'm so sick of it. Get a grip, people. Vote for this budget, or no state trooper, no one will answer the phone. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator von Imhoff. So if you have any real questions about what's going on out there, I think that pretty much sums it all up. These legislators, Senator Natasha von Imhoff, the greed, the entitlement, it is astounding. I just can't fathom it. It just is unbelievable. The greed, the entitlement, it's just astounding. Let's get something perfectly straight here. This trust fund $1 million baby who runs one of the largest for-profit, non-profit organization, the Rasmussen Foundation. She sits on the Senate Finance Committee. At the time this video was made, she was sitting as the third in line behind the chair and the co-chair, Bert Stedman, Olson, Click Bishop, David Wilson, Senator Natasha von Imhoff. All of these legislators that sit on the Senate Finance Committee, they all think that that money belongs to them and nobody else, and us Alaskans are greedy. How astounding, the greed and entitlement. We're greedy, we are entitled. We're not the ones sitting with $1 million trust fund. We're not the ones sitting on the Senate Finance Committee dictating where the taxes that are getting paid to our federal government, to our state government, are getting distributed. No, we got Senator Natasha von Imhoff sitting on that committee, who is dictating all of that money, millions and billions of dollars every single year, and making sure a lion's share of that is getting handed directly over to her and her family's organization. And the one that she is now in charge of, you know, that person that was passing away that she just referenced there, well, guess what also when he passed away happened? She was the one put in charge. She sits on the finance committee inside the Rasmussen Foundation, dictating where all those millions and billions that she sits on the Senate Finance Committee down there in Juneau is sending out to them. So she's lining her own pockets. Talk about conflict of interest going on there. Entitlement. The entitlement is the greed, and the entitlement is astounding. And that is our legislators that should be having that being said to. But no. So here we are. We're listening to the House Finance Committee right now. They're taking public testimony, and Alaskans are not calling in. They're on taking an at ease right now until it's 1 o'clock, and then they're going to come back and they're going to summon and discuss with us or listen to more of our testimonies. they're not hearing the truth. You look at that budget right there, the education and early development, $1.38 billion is their proposed budget. That's $50 million more than they gave them last year. $50 million more. And when I called in and testified, and I asked about that and told them that they should be following the current student-based allocation law that they have, they should have been seeing a 10% reduction. The budget, right, it was $1.33 billion was last year's budget for education and early development, and this year they want to jump it to $1.38 billion. They should have been seeing a 10% reduction. That should be about $130 million less than what last year's budget was of $1.3 billion. Instead, they want to give them a $50 million bonus on top of this year. And that's contingent upon whether or not their new SBA law, student-based allocation law that they're currently writing, passes or not. So if it doesn't pass, they're going to give them $50 million bonus to the $1.38 billion that you see there. If the law passes, then they won't give them that $50 million bonus that you see there on the screen. It's going to be closer to $60 million with their new SBA allocation that they have. So it's a win-win for the special interests and a lose-lose for us Alaskans. This is their whole intent. They have this year collected in taxes roughly about almost $4 billion more than they need to collect to pay for the state and capital and the mental health budget. That is $3 to $4 billion more than they need to actually pay for this year's budgets. Instead of using that money, solely using that money, which is what we have done for generations here in Alaska, they still want to continue to use their very corrupt POMV law and use that POMV law to still take their 5% draw and use the earnings reserve account to offset what they classify as a non-existent this year, and repeat that, a non-existent shortfall. There is no shortfall this year. They have a revenue surplus that is so large that the next 2-3 years they have a balanced budget without even having written the budget yet. But that's not what their plan is. That is not what they want to do. That's why they're pushing these other corrupt laws like HB 259, which is the House's version of a 75-25 split, 25% going to Alaskans, 75% going to government. 50% of that 25-75 split, 50% of it, is to go directly to education, early education and development. Now, you see there on the screen that their proposed budget is $1.38 billion. Under the 5% POMV draw, that's roughly this year going to be about $4 billion. Last year was about $3 billion. So, last year, if you use those totals, that would be roughly about, a $200 million increase. But if they passed their HB 259, that would instantly be giving them an increase of almost $700 million to early education and development and K through 12. That $700 million increase to the worst education in the nation, the worst performance records, the indoctrination of CRT into our children in our schools. And when confronted about CRT, they don't deny it. And they say that they claim that it's not being taught. But if you go to places like the North Star Schoolboro the Schoolboro District's website, if you go there and look at what they have just up on the very top of it, equity is their motto. Equity and outcomes is their motto. That is the code words for CRT, critical race theory. And this is in our schools, and they want to give them more money to keep indoctrinating our kids to hate their parents, to hate everything that has to do with authority, unless it's their authority. It's what they dictate is okay. As long as it's a woke agenda, that's all right. If it's anything that actually has accountability, would have positive outcomes, oh no, we can't have that. That's not equity anymore. We don't want equality of outcomes. We want equity
outcomes. In other words, if you got a student that is doing very well in school, they want to bring that student's performance down to match the lowest level students so that they are equal in equity of their outcomes. So where do we go from here? Again, please call right now. Make that phone call. Get on the phone. Tell these corrupt legislators to stop the theft, stop stealing Alaskans' money to cover the budget. They don't need it. Again, they've got more tax revenue than they know what to do. They're going to be back again at 1 o'clock and taking more testimony. So right now is the time to call. Call in. Call. They are not hearing from the permanent fund defenders out there. I don't know why. Where are all of you guys? Why are you not calling in? I mean, if this was the HB 259 or the SB 199 or SB 200, the very corrupted bills that they are pushing through, or HB 37, we would have 50 to 100, 200, thousands of people in previous years calling in and testifying because they are trying to protect what rightfully belongs to all Alaskans, not our government. Instead, we're silent. Here it is, our opportunity to call in and tell them to stop the theft, and nobody's calling. The only ones that are calling right now are the special interests, the ones that want their pockets lined up, the ones that want that money put into their pockets, not Alaskans. They're not the ones suffering from this pandemic. Their bank accounts are flush. Their bank accounts are overflowing. Alaska School District, I mean, well over, I think they're at $3 billion in CARES Act money that they've been receiving, and then an additional $500 million or so through the infrastructure package that got passed. The money that they got, they are overflowing in cash, and they just don't even know how to spend it all. Yet they want more money. They want this $50 million increase this year, or they want the student-based allocation rewritten so that they can continue to keep fleecing Alaskans for the worst education in the nation. It's really got to stop. Health and Social Services, $1.36 billion. That's a $60 million increase over last year. And they claim that's still not enough. We're paying double to triple the cost for our health care here in Alaska compared to anywhere else in the nation. I myself have firsthand experience of this. I have to go once a year and go get a welfare check at the hospital and have them take my blood pressure, take my blood, check on me. Basically, it's just an overblown physical that should, in all reality, cost no more than about $100. And instead, I paid $300 for that visit to spend 20 minutes in there talking with the doctors and nurses and going through processing. It took me a whole 30 minutes. It cost me $300 for that. Then they charged me an additional $90 on top of that to draw my blood and have the lab work done. So all told, I paid $400 for basically a physical that I have to get every single year to get the medicines that I need to live. And when myself, I'm not the best of health. I've had 2 heart attacks in my life, and they were early on, and long before most people would ever even consider having a heart problem is when it happened to me. I didn't know at the time that I had a bad cholesterol that was blocking my arteries, that my body was creating it. No matter how good the food was that I was eating, how healthy it was, my body turned it all into bad cholesterol and blocking my arteries. I paid the price for it. I was the age of 30 when this happened, still in my 30s. And now here I am. Every year I have to have medications, blood thinners, and everything else to stay alive. And they forced me to go spend $400 a year to go get a physical, just so that they can reapprove medicines that I have been receiving now for a decade, longer than a decade. And it's just astounding, yet they want to increase it. Pre-pandemic levels for those that were getting welfare in Alaska was less than 1/3 of Alaska was on welfare. Less than 1/3 of Alaska qualified for the free health care in Alaska. Now that the pandemic has happened, they now have nearly 40% of Alaska is living off of welfare in one form or another, and collecting it. 40% of Alaska. And they think that giving us a token stimulus check of $1,300 on top of $1,100 is going to offset the costs of what things are right now, of hyperinflation going over 10%, gasoline prices now over 50 to 100% more than what it was a year ago.
50 cents in just the last 3 days. I mean, going to the gas pump, a 20-gallon tank now costs you $10 more than it did a week ago. And this is just the small tip of the iceberg. Bryce Edgman there came out with his, when they announced their $1,300 that they want to give us, that gas prices could go over $8 a gallon by this time next year. And they think giving us $1,300 is going to offset those kind of costs. I mean, heating oil, fuel oil to be able to keep your house warm. It's keeping pace with the prices. I mean, it's going up just as fast as the gasoline pumps are. So heating our homes are going to be double what it was the year before. I mean, $1,000 put almost 800 gallons into my fuel tank. Or last year, let's see, not 800 gallons, but put in just about 400 gallons of fuel oil into my 500-gallon tank. That same $1,000 is not going to do that. I'll be lucky to be able to put 200 gallons into my tank instead of 400 gallons. I will have to come up with $2,000 to fill my tank this next year instead of the $1,000 I paid this past year. Take that on a scale of every Alaskan out there. I mean, this is just astronomically catastrophic. And they think giving us a token $1,300 using the extra tax revenue they received this year is going to offset that. How about they follow the law? Follow our statutory PFD law. Statutory PFD law says we should be receiving a $4,000 check this year. If you subtract the $1,100 token PFD they want to give us, subtract the $1,300 stimulus that they want to give us, that's $2,400 right there of the $4,000 they should be giving us. So they're still pocketing $1,600 themselves of our money they're sticking into their pocket and turning around and paying it out to the special interest. They're not spending the tax revenue. No, that tax revenue is just to stay exactly where it is, because they're still going to use their corrupt POMV law, and SB 26. They're going to still use that very corrupt law. They're still going to take the 5% draw from the earnings reserve account. They're still going to use tax revenue to pay us our PFD. They're going to use tax revenue to pay the stimulus check, and they're going to use our earnings reserve account to pay for the budgets and the $148 million bonus that they're going to give on the state and capital and mental health budget this year. And I shouldn't add capital into that, because this budget you see in front of us does not represent the capital budget yet. This is not included in that. If we take all the funds and all the money that they have available to them this year, that's $29 billion. Yes, you just heard that right. $29 billion. And they want that, every penny of it, put into their pockets. They want all of that money given just to them. And they don't care who they got to steal it from to get it. They're going to do it. And so where do we go from there? Where does it end? Where does the madness of all of this actually stop? It's really hard to say. It doesn't. I still can't understand how they keep getting away with this and with their policies and whatnot. It just really does floor me. You take all that time and you keep doing all of this and you keep trying to make things happen, and you just never know. Just never know.
If the Senate can please come back to order, we are recessed to a call of the chair.
That was last year. That was them ending the session last year. But Natasha von Imhoff, the greed, the entitlement of Alaskans, it's just astounding, coming from one of the most corrupt legislators we have out there. She sits on the Senate Finance, dictating all the money going directly into the Rasmussen Foundation. Anchorage last year, they gave hundreds of millions to them. Hundreds of millions out of the local taxes of Anchorage residents, those in the Anchorage community, from your property taxes. They handed it right over to the Rasmussen Foundation. Our state, the state budget, they do the same thing. Hundreds of millions to billions a year is getting handed directly over the Rasmussen Foundation. And who owns the purse strings dictating where that money is coming from and going to them? Senator Natasha von Imhoff. Complete conflict of interest. And then you got Bert Stedman, who outright said at the very beginning that when the governor had come out with his proposed budget, and they had their press conference directly after that, and he outright stated, we're not going to listen to what the governor says. We're not going to follow what the governor says. We have our own agenda. Our own agenda is not following the law. Our own agenda is making up the laws as we go and manipulating them so that they match our agenda and get what we want in the end. It just does not ever end. We've got about 3 more minutes of time here to fill up before they're supposed to get back into taking testimony. So if you have not called in yet and you have not given your 2 cents on what the budget is, it is your opportunity. They are only going to take phone calls until 1:30, and then they're going to cut it off at that point. They were supposed to be going until 2 o'clock today, and because nobody's calling in, they're not bothering to even be sitting in the room right now. I mean, I can show you really quick. There is nobody in there. They are gone. They have walked away. They want to make sure that nobody gets to see anything. This is what we're getting to look at, a view of Juneau out there through the Capitol window, I believe. This is what they're now showing us right now, because those legislators that are supposed to be listening to us giving testimony are not even in the room. Why? Because nobody's calling in, and those that have called in all work for the special interest. They're mayors. They work for health care. They have they want the unions they're calling in left and right. These people are all just manipulating the system. Public radio's calling in, even though they gave them $1.5 million increase this year to public radio. The Marine Highway has seen so much from the infrastructure package. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And that includes the COVID relief money that has offset operation costs. And they are demanding that they hand over our PFDs to them, give them more money to cover costs that have been far exceeded and paid for by the COVID CARES Act, the relief money that they received, the new infrastructure package that was passed. Oh, man, I could just go on for hours and hours and hours. So how can you help? Like, share this video. Make sure more Alaskans get to see and hear what is going on. That is one way to stop this. Call in and testify right now. Stop what you're doing. Pick up the telephone. Call in and testify. You will be on within minutes here shortly. Again, they're going to restart here at 1 o'clock. And they're going to get back up into discussing the listening to us give testimony. I am really sickened listening to those who have called in today, and there's supposed to be a 2-minute time limit, and as long as they're speaking and matching the agenda they have in play there, they let them go well beyond the 2-minute mark. I called in yesterday, gave my testimony. They cut me off right at 2 minutes. Exactly 2 minutes. I got this message that said, your line has been muted, you're no longer allowed to talk, you're no longer allowed to give your 2 cents anymore. I only had about 45 seconds left to go in what I had to say, but nope, they cut me off because what I was saying was exposing the truth that they have more revenue in taxes than they have set for the budget. There is no need for their POMV law this year. They could completely ignore that law. They could easily follow the statutory PFD law without a problem. They could even pay back every penny they have stolen over the last 6 years and still not touched all of the record-breaking profits that has been made just this year. They want to keep all that hidden. That's why they shut my testimony down. They don't want those truths exposed. They don't want people like me, like you who are watching this right now, calling in and pointing out those truths. They want us to be a sheep that believes the narrative, believes the left-stream media's spin, believes their spin. The money is there. There is absolutely no reason why they can't pay us our statutory PFD. There is no reason why they should be using the POMV law this year. None whatsoever. The POMV law should be just trash canned. In fact, they should be signing a bill this year that says the POMV law no longer is in existence, because they're going to pass laws that actually put accountability into the state and capital budget. They're going to pass laws like SJR 6. The one and only PFD bill that Alaskans were willing to get behind. Since they won't do that one, Alaskans reject any other bill that they have out there. We will 100% stand behind the statutory PFD law. That's the only law that we believe is right and just. And because they won't bring forward the bills that we want to have, like SJR 6, instead they bring SB 199 that says 750 million in new taxes before they'll pay us a PFD. But we got to have that 750 million in new taxes first. Or SB 200, 50% of that money is going to go straight to the POMV draw, is going to go straight to education. That's a $700 million increase to their budget in a blink of an eye with that law if it was to pass. Strips out, both of them strip out the statutory PFD law, make sure that it no longer even exists, it removes it, taking the argument away from us Alaskans that we've had these last 6 years. Puts full control into the legislators and the language in there that says may or may not pay us a PFD in all of the bills they have. They may or may not give us a PFD. It's up to their discretion on what they want to do. And we already know what it comes down to, whether or not they may or may not. They will not, if they can make it happen, they will not ever pay us another PFD if they have that given to them, that kind of power and control. So next time they have testimonies or they have anything to do with SB 199, SB 200, HB 259, or HB 37, you need to be calling and testifying and telling these people hell no, to follow the law, to get rid of the SB 26 POMV law, that it's more corrupt than anything else, causes more problems than it's ever done good. It just gives them a way to spend money unferreted and give the Alaskans a shaft while they do it. Looks like they're getting really close to getting back on right now, and I'm at the IDs. So as soon as that happens, I will be muting my end and re-undoing theirs, and there it goes.
We'll call House Finance back to order at 1:03 p.m. on Saturday, March 5th, 2022. And we've got one person online here. I'd like to announce again just the phone numbers and the email address if you'd like to provide public testimony. If folks have a pen and paper, for those folks that are calling from outside of Anchorage or Juneau, please call 844-586-9085. And if you're in Anchorage, you can call 907-563-9085. If you're in Juneau, you can call 907-586-9085. I will repeat those numbers after we take our testimony. And then we also have the email address, house.finance@akleg.gov. And if folks could be signed up by 1:30 today to be put into the on the list. And so with that, we've got Terry Walker online calling in from Kotzebue. Terry, if you can state your name and your affiliation and proceed with your testimony.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Terry Avignac Walker, Superintendent of the Northwest Arctic Borough School District. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon, and also your work through all the budget subcommittee process is very much appreciated. I am here in support of increased funding to the base student allocation. Reliable funding is crucial for districts to plan and prepare for the upcoming school years. And here are some reasons why. We must be able to attract and retain high-quality educators. Rural areas are hardest hit with a teacher turnover rate of between 25 to 40% each year in our district, and 75 to 90% turnover over a 5-year period. Teacher shortage is happening nationwide, and legislators must help to address the issue of how districts, especially in the rural areas where most of our teachers come from out of region and out of state, how you will help to attract and retain the teachers needed to serve our students. Another reason is because of inflation. Inflation is damaging our public education and student opportunities across Alaska. The price for food, utilities, heating, etc. has increased tremendously. I'll remind you that in the governor's address at the beginning of the session, he had said that inflation was at a 40-year high. The current budget process does not account for inflation. The result for every district is going to be further cuts to student programs because the funding we receive from the state must cover our fixed costs. Some examples of our fixed cost increases that we've seen in our district. We serve 13 schools in 11 communities from FY 2019 to 2021. We've seen the cost of freight to villages increase by 10 cents for freight over 10 pounds, which equals about 10% increase. Freight minimums have also increased by $5, about at a 20% increase. In the last year, from FY 21 to 22, year to date, there's been a 16% overall increase to our heating fuel expenses. This increase is after going out to bid by our fuel in bulk, to buy our fuel in bulk. The price continues to increase daily. This past year was a cold winter, and we have had to cut into our reserves, so now we have to buy even more fuel to fill back up our reserves. And so our 11 villages don't have roads that connect them. During the summer, we make every effort to barge our fuel into the communities to heat our buildings. Some of the villages, the river water may never get high enough for the barge to make it, so the fuel has to be flown in, which increases our costs tremendously.
Ms. Walker?
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you could please wrap it up.
Okay, so typically it's about $7 a gallon, but we anticipate a $2 increase going into the next school year. And, you know, there's the food cost that's gone up about 12%, and, you know, salary increases for both our certified and classified. And last, I'll just say that we've had to make cuts in programs that like pre-K, CTE, counselors, student activities, and those are all the things that keep our kids in school. And just want you to address our funding, our education funding, and increase the base student allocation to offset the inflation. So thank you very much for your consideration and your time.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Walker. And while we don't have more testifiers, we just want to try to be fair to the other folks who we've limited to 2 minutes. And just a reminder, if folks do go over with their testimony and they have more that they'd like to provide to the committee, please feel free to submit your testimony to house.finance@akleg.gov. And I don't see anybody else on the line here, but for folks who may have missed the phone numbers earlier, if you're calling from outside of Anchorage or Juneau, please call us at 844-586-9085. Again, 844-586-9085. If you're calling from Anchorage, you can call in at 907-563-9085. And finally, if you're calling from Juneau, you can call us at 907-586-9085. So with that, again, the deadline for signing up is 1:30. And so if you'd like to be put on the list, please do so by 1:30. And we are going to be at ease until, let's say, 1:35. So we'll be at ease. Or I'm sorry, we've got one person who's just come online here. Stephanie Berglund, calling in from Anchorage. Stephanie, if you can state your name and your affiliation, and go ahead and start with your testimony.
Thank you to the chair and members of the committee for the opportunity to testify. My name is Stephanie Berglund. I am a resident of Anchorage, but I'm also the CEO of Thread and calling on behalf of Thread. Thread is a 35-year-old nonprofit that works across the state to increase access to affordable and quality early care and education, and we have a specific focus on childcare. Thank you for supporting the proposed FY23 operating budget, and thank you for including and supporting the DEED Finance Committee's recommendation and increase in support of pre-K. There's a great need in Alaska to continue supporting and increasing early childhood investments. Childcare and our other early childhood programs have struggled during the pandemic, and licensed childcare programs whose small businesses were already fragile prior to the pandemic are even more now. Their operating costs have increased at the same time their revenue has decreased from fewer children in care. Right now, they're unable to serve more children due to a workforce shortage, which is difficult to fill with high competition for workers, low wages, and few benefits available. Thread is proud to be partnering with the state of Alaska to support the federal CRSA and ARPA childcare resources to reach those in need. However, we believe this federal relief will not be enough to stabilize the sector. So Thread encourages you to consider additional COVID discretionary relief dollars to be allocated to childcare to ensure it not only survives, but thrives. Childcare is critical infrastructure in our state that allows over 50,000 working families to get to work, school, and training. We know that as families have been returning to work and school, there is and will be more demand for childcare. Thank you for supporting childcare, pre-K, and early learning in the budget, and please consider additional ways to provide support for this critical sector. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Berglund. I don't see any questions of the committee, and so we will stand at ease until 1:35 p.m.
If the Senate can please come back to order, we are recessed to a call of the chair.
Here I am, here we all are, away from our families, debating a dividend. The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it. My father is at home dying of cancer, and I am here. Here I am, here we all are, away from our families, debating a dividend. The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it. My father is at home dying of cancer, and I am here listening to the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard. I'm so sick of it. Get a grip, people. Vote for this budget, or no state trooper, no one will answer the phone. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator von Imhoff.
Well, my fellow Alaskans, you definitely see what is going on out there. I mean, that is Natasha von Imhoff on the floor last year, the Senate Finance, and her rousing speech about the greed and entitlement. The only mistake that she made during that speech is that the only greed and entitlement are those that you see presented in the room right now that are directly in front of you. These people just don't care. and they are at ease until 1:35, which is about another 20 more minutes. And why is that? Because nobody is bothering to call in. Nobody is calling down there into Juneau telling them to stop the theft. So I am going to play that entire video in its entire length of Natasha von Imhoff and the speech that she gave on the Senate floor last year. And just keep in mind while you're listening to this video is to play it as in your head that everything she is saying is what Alaska legislators believe wholeheartedly down there, that they are superior, only they know how to spend our money, that only they can do and protect Alaskans by stealing our money and spending it for us, because we are just too stupid to know how to spend our own money, because we're greedy, we are entitled. We must be all just like Natasha von Imhoff and be that $1 million trust fund baby that family owns the largest for-profit organization, the Rasmussen Foundation, that collects hundreds of millions and billions of dollars from our state and local taxes every single year. And she sits on the finance committee handing that money directly over to her family year after year. So here's the entire video of what she had to say that day.
Okay, we are back on the record and debating the conference committee report. Is there anyone else that would like to? Senator von Imhoff.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I just want to make sure that the folks that are listening at home fully understands the consequences for today's actions. A no vote means the budget doesn't pass. 22,000 people, state workers, will be out of work July 1st. That does not include the tens of thousands of teachers and university employees around the state of Alaska. Everyone out of jobs will not be paid. For the reverse sweep, about $130 million will not be funded in the budget. Holes all over the budget. What kind of programs? The whammy. You want doctors? We're not going to pay for them anymore. The Alaska Scholarship Funds. All the folks that are trying to get an education at the university, gone. Remember a couple years ago when that happened? The public didn't like it. There were rallying cries right out in front of our building here. Community assistance, gone. Victims Restitution Fund, gone. The Power Cost Equalization Fund will be swept. All of those programs will not be funded. With the CBR vote not being funded, there'll be small to nearly nothing capital budget. No oil tax credits paid at all. 2/3 of the school bond debt reimbursement gone, not funded. Think about all of these year-round jobs. Good pay with benefits that support families, gone. Nothing. Nada. Hey, if you drive over a bridge, I suggest you hold your breath and pray, because it could fall on you, because no one's going to be around to fix it. If you want a permit to mine, nope, not going to happen. If you're on food stamps and you call up and ask someone to process your application, no one will answer the phone. If you're on Medicaid and you need emergency surgery, no one's going to authorize it because no one will answer the phone. Medicaid will be shut down. You call a state trooper, I'm sorry, you'll be sitting on the side of the road bleeding. No one will answer the phone. Summer school teachers, all those kids that were not in school for the past year, there is summer school going on right now. July 1st, nope, they're not going to get paid. Those teachers, your kids, go home. No one's going to be paid. Why? Because we want a bigger dividend. So $325 million approximately pays for a $500 check. So $1,000 dividends, about $650 million, and so forth. So I ask you this, what is the better investment? $325 million in helping people take a $500 check to pay for rent, to pay for utilities, to pay for school clothes, their debt, maybe the college, maybe on travel, putting in savings, whatever it may be. Some folks really need this money, absolutely. But we have programs to pay for those. We have rent assistance. We have $200 million for Alaska housing assistance. We have a very robust Medicaid budget. We have scholarship assistance for people. Would $325 million be better spent on year-round jobs, on bridges, on roads, on connecting communities with roads, on more mining, more resource extraction? That's what we do. That's our state. Or do we just want to rely on the state government and the federal government forever? Mr. President, it's the dividend again and again. We are crippling our state and we are not moving forward. This budget has a $500 dividend or a $1,000 dividend, not to mention all the other federal money that people have received this year. $1,400 in the CARES Act, another $600 in the Alaska Recovery or American Recovery Act. There's been a lot of cash going out to people this year. This is the year that we should focus on reinvigorating our economy through year-round jobs that provide competitive wages that support families well into the future. But no, here we are. Here I am. Here we all are away from.
So, you know, here we are, Alaskans. We've got Senator Natasha von Imhoff pleading to us all, telling us all that this is the way it's going to be. Like it, love it, live it. This is all that matters. But bottom line comes down to it is that the last portion of her video that I'm just about ready to restart here says it all. This is what Alaskan legislators down there in Juneau, the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them, this is what they think of Alaskans when it comes to our permanent fund dividend.
A dividend. The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it. My father is at home dying of cancer, and I am here listening to the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard. I'm so sick of it. Get a grip, people. Vote for this budget. Or no state trooper, no one will answer the phone. Thank you. A dividend. The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it. My father is at home dying of cancer, and I am here listening to the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard. I'm so sick of it. Get a grip, people. Vote for this budget. Or no state trooper, no one will answer the phone. Of wages that support families. Here I am, here we all are, away from our families, debating a dividend. The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me. I just don't fathom it. My father is at home dying of cancer, and I am here listening to the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard. I'm so sick of it. Get a grip, people. Vote for this budget. Or no state trooper, no one will answer the phone.
So here we are. I mean, we've got people like Senator Natasha von Imhoff, who sits on the Senate Finance Committee, who is in direct violation of our laws for basically working for the special interests. I mean, her family owns the Rasmussen Foundation. She sits on the board of directors. In fact, I think she was made president after her grandfather passed away. And she controls all the purse strings there in her family's business, the Rasmussen Foundation, and she controls the purse strings that are in the Senate Finance Committee. All the money that is being passed through our government is she's got control over that, and she's distributing it directly over to her family and the special interest. It's just got to come to an end. You see there on the screen right now, you've got early education and development, $101 billion, $380 billion, $1.38 billion. That's a $50 million increase over last year's budget. They're calling that a $50 million bonus this year. That bonus will only be applied if the new student base allocation SBA law that they are crafting right now doesn't get passed. They're going to get that $50 million bonus instead. The SBA law that they're trying to now get pushed through would basically give them a $60 million increase to their budget. And they're really hoping that Alaskans are too stupid to know the difference, and instead they could be just following the law that is on the books right now, the current student base allocation law, and they should be seeing a $130 million decrease to their budget. Yes, you heard that right. A $130 million decrease to their budget this year. Instead of the $1.38 billion that they're proposing, it would be somewhere closer to $1.2 billion, because their current budget is only $1.33 billion. So at a $1.33 billion with a $130 million reduction would give them $1.2 billion. Instead, they want to give them $1.38 billion. They want to increase it by $50 million more than last year. And if the SBA law that they're trying to push through right now to change the student base allocation passes, they won't give them that one-time bonus. They won't need to, because the new base allocation would actually give it $60 million increase above what you see there. So basically a $2 billion spending on the K through 12 and early education, which has the worst performance in the nation. We are ranked worse than many third world countries. This was all came out at the beginning of the calendar year for the legislative session. And the Department of Revenue has also come out and exclaimed that they have received more tax money than they have allocated for the budget this year, by billions. And instead of using the tax money to pay for the state and capital and the mental budget, they still want to use their very corrupt SB 26 POMV law and use our ERA, our permanent funds, to pay for the budget, even though they have more tax revenue than they have expenditures right at this moment, in the tune of billions of dollars. Instead of taking that extra billions that they have and sticking it into CBR account and building that back up to get it back to the $12 billion level it needs to be to stop the sweep that happens every year, that happens to be affected by the power cost equalization, WWAMI, ferry systems, all that other good stuff that the sweep gathers all that money back in. And they want to claim that they could easily stop that from happening by getting the CBR account back up to $12 billion. That would stop the constitutional mandate that says that they have to sweep those money out of those funds every year. But they don't want you to know that. They don't want to know, because of their shortfalls, their inability to manage money, inability to write a balanced budget, is what causes that sweep to happen every single year. It's their fault. It's Alaska legislators' fault. It's not our governor's fault. It is their fault. The only reason why we have not received a permanent statutory PFD fund, or the payment over the past 4 years that Governor Dunleavy has been in the office, it's not Governor Dunleavy's fault. He has put it in the budget every single year. He has even put a compromise of a 50-50 split, as long as it got put into the Constitution in there. And instead of doing what the governor has asked them to do, our Alaska legislators have said, oh, we're going to give you a token $1,100 PFD last year out of the $3,700 you're supposed to have gotten. We're only going to give you $1,100 of that. Suck it up, Buttercup. You don't need the money. Us in government need it more than you. the special interests out there need it more than you. And you can hear it in the testimony over the last 3 days. You can hear it just with the people that are calling in today. Where are politics followers? Where are you? Why are you not calling in right now? Why are you not demanding they give us our statutory PFD? Why are you not demanding they follow the law? Why are you not demanding that they use tax revenue to pay for the state and capital budget and not use their corrupt POMV law? They don't need that law in use this year. They have more than enough in tax revenue to pay for everything, and they do not need one penny, not one red cent of that ERA account to fund the budget this year. But they're still going to keep pushing that POMV law. They're going to still keep saying, well, that's the law of the land now, even though technically, legally, the statutory PFD formula is the law of the land. It has been there for 4 decades. It has precedence. It is the only law that they should be following, but they won't. And this year we should be seeing a 4,000 plus permanent fund dividend if they were to follow our statutory PFD law. Instead, they're offering us $1,100 of that $4 grand. $1,100, and then they're out saying, oh, we're going to give you the stimulus check of $1,300. Mark my words, this is to buy your vote. When elections happen in November, they are using this to buy your vote. So if you were to take the token PFD they want to give us, you take the stimulus check that they want to give us, comes out to about $2,400. That still is $1,600 less than what a statutory PFD would be. Put this in the concept, they are that $1,600 is for them to spend any way that they want to. It's just another way to continue the theft and continue the agenda down the road, even though they have the money there to pay for everything, but they don't want to. They want to keep us blind. They want to make it seem like that they're in debt, that they have no money to pay the bills, and they're just lying to you. And so is media, so is mainstream media. They're not highlighting it. They're parroting the words of those that are lying to us down there. These never-ending corrupt legislators that we have just continue to keep the theft going, perpetuating the lies. It takes Alaskans like you, takes Alaskans like me, calling in, testifying, emailing them, telling them to stop the theft, getting out in public, openly expressing your feelings. I mean, it's sickening listening to the special interests calling in today that they're giving them 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes to testify. And and then people like me, I call in yesterday, and they, right at the 2-minute mark, they instantly shut off my connection that said I was disconnected and no longer able to give testimony. Yet, if you were talking about their agenda, 3 minutes, 4 minutes later, they're finally turning them off and saying we need to move on to the next caller. But if you're not for their agenda, they will cut you off immediately, which is what they did to me. I was pointing out their hypocrisy, pointing out the overflow of abundance in tax revenue that they have, that they do not need the POMV law, that they could follow the statutory PFD law, that they could pay back every penny that they have stolen from us and still not spent all the record-breaking profits that the ERA had put into it this year. All right, we are literally just minutes away from them going back live. I'm hoping that everybody that is listening to me right now is picking up that telephone and calling them. The numbers are there. I have posted them more times than I care to admit, and I have shared this video far and wide as far as I possibly can, and hopefully you are too, liking and sharing this video. We got to beat the political monsters that are out there, the censorship that is going on. Facebook has literally shadow banned my page again. I'm reaching less than 5% of my followers every time I post something. 4,600 people follow Politic, and only 100 people so far have seen this video. All the shares that you see there, primarily, all those are from me. I'm trying to get the word out, trying to get people to acknowledge that these testimonies are going on, to call in, to give your testimony, to break the myths, stop the lies. The people in Alaska need to hear how much extra revenue they have sitting there. These legislators won't tell you. Senator Mike Shower did yesterday. I mean, he took the time, he did a live video, he explained it, he was breaking it down, and openly admits that when people like me point out that they got more tax revenue than they have for inside of the budget to spend, that's not the myth that they're telling us. They're saying, oh no, we don't have enough tax revenue. Ignore those billions in dollars, well over what it's going to cost. This is their objective. That's their agenda. And they are moving to go back out of ease here. I see Foster back into his chair. The at ease is about ready to end. And don't be surprised, everybody that sits in the House Finance Committee I don't think there is a single one inside of that room that is not on the special interests or been bought out by the special interests in their agenda. They are paid for actors. They are not legislators. They are actors. They are pretending to do their job, but they are really in the pockets of the special interests, the unions, the health cares, the K through 12 organization. They are deep into those pockets. Those are the only people they answer to. And it's obvious by the testimonies that are coming in, the special interests are the only one calling in, demanding that they steal more money from us to give it to them. It just never ends. All right, looks like he's about ready to gavel. I see him grabbed it there. And any second now they're going to get started. I mean, they're already a minute
Okay,
past.
House Finance back on record at 1:36 p.m. on Saturday, March 5th, 2022. And just to be sure, I don't see anybody in the audience here who would like to testify. And I don't believe there's anybody online who would like to testify. Just making sure. I think we are good. So with that, we will go ahead and close public testimony. And so with that, our next meeting will be scheduled, or actually I should say first, if folks would like to submit written public testimony, we'll be accepting that up until 3 o'clock today to be included with the official record for the operating budget. And that can be submitted to house.finance@akleg.gov. And so with that, our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 7th at 1:30 p.m. And at that meeting, a 9 a.m. meeting had been scheduled, but that is canceled. So our next meeting is March 7th at 1:30 p.m., Monday. And at that meeting, Co-Chair Merrick will be hearing House Bill 272 regarding an increase to the base student allocation, HB 273 regarding an increase to the base student allocation with regard to inflation, HB 166 regarding one license plate per vehicle, and HB 177 regarding a revised program appropriations. So fairly full schedule on Monday. So if there's nothing else to come before the committee, we will be adjourned at 1:38 p.m. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all for tuning in here today. I really do appreciate it. You got to listen to the state and capital budget, I should say the state and mental health budget. The capital budget is not the ones that was being heard today. They openly are not going to change a damn thing other than maybe increasing more of the funding given to the special interest, because they are the only ones, literally the only ones calling in. When you say 4 people out of the 300 phone calls they've received over the last 3 days, only 3 of us spoke up outright against what they are doing, and everybody else is give me more money, hands out, give us more money. Appreciate you guys all being here today. I mean, it's a Saturday, it's a beautiful day. Rondi is going on, the races are going on. And we really do need to put a stop to this stuff. There's the budget currently up in front of us. And just so that you are aware, you can still email up until 3 o'clock today to house.finance.akleg.gov. That is house.finance@akleg.gov. Reference the state budget and the mental health budget in your testimony and tell them to stop the theft. This is being pushed through, and it's an outright corrupt bill that has no business being there in Juneau. But our legislators don't work for Alaskans. They don't work for the majority of us. They can care less about us. It's all about the special interests and how much money they can funnel into their pockets. NEA of Alaska, Alaska Healthcare Organization, you name it, They are making sure the university, I mean, they gave the university a $5 million bonus this year in this new budget. Health and Social Services, $60 million. Department of Health and Department of Education and Early Development, $50 million more dollars. $148 million more in increased revenue to the special interest, and not one penny of those increases is going to be taken from the overabundance of tax revenue that they've received this year that far exceeds anything they have written in this budget. If you remove the permanent fund dividend out of the equation that you see up there on the screen right now, if you were to completely take that out of the equation so that it doesn't exist, currently at this moment they have a surplus of billions. I think it's close to around $4 billion more in tax revenue than they actually have currently allocated into the current budget. So they could follow the statutory PFD law, transfer our permanent fund over from that to be paid. That would not be included in this budget you see in the screen, because technically it's not a budget item. Our PFD is not supposed to be being paid for using our taxes. It's supposed to be being paid for by the earnings made in the earnings reserve account from the PFD corporation, from our corpus every single year. But that's not where they're getting the money from. They're still going to use their POMV law. They're not going to use the overabundance in taxes, the $4 billion in overages that they have extra far and beyond what they need. Nope. They're going to use our permanent fund dividend, and then they're going to give us what they classify as a bonus check. That bonus check, that stimulus check, is supposed to offset our heating and fuel costs and food costs that are far beyond what that $1,300. I mean, that $1,300 is maybe 2 or 3 months offsetting what it's going to cost us this next year in bills. I mean, that's just a drop in the bucket. I mean, 3 months? Huh. What a joke. So combining their cut PFD, their stimulus check is about $2,500, depending on which mainstream media you want to follow. The numbers I have puts it around $2,400. And that's still $1,600 less than what our statutory PFD is supposed to be this year. So don't believe their lies. They could pay us our statutory PFD. They could pay back every penny that they have stolen over the last 6 years and still not spent all of the record-breaking profits that the corporation has made this year. They would still be billions in the green, not in the red, billions in the green. But they don't want you to know that. Again, they got more tax revenue than they have for expenditures this year. By the billions, $3-4 billion extra dollars. They could just stick that into the CBR account, get it up to the $12 billion mark, which would stop the triggering of the sweep, stop another one of their arguments. No more PCE arguments, no more whammy arguments, no more ferry arguments. All of that money that was gathered and collected during the sweep wouldn't happen anymore, because they have $12 billion sitting in their reserve or the CBR account where it's supposed to be. Instead of doing what is necessary to get that money built back up again, they are doing their best to try to spend it as fast as they possibly can, so that they can continue the deficit spending, so that they can justify their POMV draw, which by all rights and all accounts shouldn't even apply this year. They don't need to draw any money out of the earnings reserve to cover the budget. They have received more in tax revenue than they have expenditures for the state and capital budget, and they know it. They have over $29 billion sitting there this year to be able to spend on whatever the hell they want, if you include all the COVID CARES Act money, the infrastructure money, and the tax revenue that they have sitting there. And if I take the tax revenue and actually add that into there, it's well over $29 billion. It's closer to $35 billion what they have there to be able to spend. But they don't want us to know that. They want us to be ignorant to the fact of all the billions they have rolling into this state to pay for things. And again, if we just eliminate all the CARES, eliminate the infrastructure out of the equation, and we just look at tax revenue collected this year from our oil revenue and all that other good stuff, minerals, the works, they have in the tune of $3 to $4 billion above what that state and capital budget that you're currently seeing on the screen. And if you were to eliminate the permanent fund dividend out of their equation, that's almost $1 billion more that they have that they could be putting into the CBR instead of spending tax money to give us a permanent fund dividend. There's no reason why they should be using tax money. They should be following our statutory PFD law, which is 4 decades old, that says that money is to be transferred from the earnings reserve account. to be paid out in a form of a dividend to all of eligible Alaskans here in the state. They don't want to follow the law. They want us to believe the myth they're pushing, the lies that they're pushing, that they don't have the money to do that. It's a big outright lie. Like I said just a second ago, they could pay us this year's statutory PFD, which is around $4,000, pay us back every penny that they have stolen over the last 6 years, all $14,000 of it, and still be in the green for the record-breaking profits that they have made just this year, sitting in the ERA account. Stop believing the lies. Stop believing the myths. Thank you all for tuning in today. Enjoy your Saturday afternoon. If you're in the Anchorage area, please go enjoy the Ferrandi going on right now. The race starts, and the mushers that are there, show them your support for one of Alaska's oldest traditions that we have going on. And get a second, please go to my website, politidic.com, and click that support button and donate some money today. All proceeds goes right back into making sure that I can keep expanding my services and getting the information out to all of you. It pays for the restream services that are currently being used right now, that has us streaming live on Politidic Unfiltered on Facebook, on YouTube at Politidic, and Twitter at Politidic. You can find us live on all of those channels. Our goal next is to be starting to stream live on Rumble. Rumble requires a paid-for account. Just their minimum account is $25 a month, which allows 50 subscribers or 50 viewers to watch any given video when they are live. I would love to be able to get up to the unlimited mark, but that requires $400 to $500 a month just to be unlimited streaming on Rumble. And if I was to get to that point, I would hope that I am making enough money at doing this that I could quit working and start doing this full time. That's been my dream. I would love to be able to retire from my regular work and be able to do politics full time. I would take all proceeds. I would travel to Juneau. I would be doing interviews on a daily basis. You would see me in Anchorage every time they have assembly meetings or school board meetings. I would love to be there doing that. But unfortunately, I'm not a rich person. I live pretty much hand to mouth. Everything I make goes right back into keeping my household going, keeping my kids well fed and warm, and just doing normal things that living life requires you to do. And again, all proceeds that goes to Politidic is spent on Politidic. You pay for the restream services that this is all being streamed out on right now. You guys help cover the website that's out there and any expenditures and costs. And it's been your support that's been making us such a great success out there, getting the word out that our mainstream media and corrupt legislators don't want you to know. Again, you guys all have a great day. Make sure you like and share this video. And you have until 3 p.m. today to submit your emails to house.finance.akleg.gov and give your response for the state budget and the mental health budget that they have been taking testimony on for the last 3 days. Take the opportunity, send them that email, and let them know what you think, so that we can hopefully one day stop the theft and be able to get accountability back in where they balance the budget, matching the tax revenue they have coming in the door, which they have more than enough tax revenue this year to cover the budget. But they are still using their corrupt POMV law to steal from our earnings reserve account and our PFDs to pay for something that they have no need of our money to do that. They have enough tax revenue that they've collected to pay for everything in the tune of billions more. Even Senator Mike Shower here a couple days ago openly admitted that they have so much tax revenue that has come into the door that they can balance the budget for the next several years without ever having to use the POMV draw to cover the budget. Again, several years of extra revenue sitting there collected just this year that can cover the next 2 years worth of budgets without ever touching one penny of our permanent fund dividends or their POMV law that they have. They don't need it. It's just a con job of them trying to buffalo Alaskans. They think we're stupid, and they have been years whittling us down to believe their lies. Stop believing their lies. Start telling the truth out there. Start spreading the truth. Share videos like this one. Again, have yourself a